I'm live here from a remote location, having just returned from the General Flynn sentencing hearing. And of course, I'm joined, as always, on Tuesdays at 3 by my friend Larry Nichols. Larry, how you feeling today?
I'm here doing okay, I guess.
Good to
A little
hear.
noisy where you are, but we're here.
Yeah, I'm in a hotel lobby, so it's a little bit, hopefully the sound is good for everybody. I just came back from the Flynn sentencing hearing and, dealing with network problems, dealing with timing, all the standard logistics of getting to a location on time and understanding what's going on. Now, Larry, I know you weren't there, and they don't allow cameras in the courtrooms, which bothers me quite a lot, but basically the upshot of the hearing is that it's been postponed. Now, in March, General Flynn's lawyers, which oddly are Covington and Burling, which is a decidedly Democrat law firm. We've got Eric Holder as a partner at Covington and Burling, and that's very strange that Flynn selected
Oh,
them.
my God.
I know.
No wonder.
Yeah, and also Lanny Brewer, I think, Lanny Brewer, I think, is also at Covington and Burling. So there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in D.C. as far as these law firms go. And the most interesting aspect of the hearing to me, Larry, was they spoke a lot about another trial that's going on in the Eastern District of Virginia. And there are two indictments that were just unsealed the other day. They are former business partners of General Flynn. And there was some discussion within the hearing as to whether or not General Flynn could be indicted in that case as well. And the government indicated that he could, but it wasn't their intention to indict him. And to me, it felt very much like, it's easy for people to be there and be confused by what's going on and not know what's going on. But if you sort of have been watching this for a while and have the bigger picture and know some of the other factors as far as how Robert Mueller operates and the fact that Judge Emmet Sullivan, who's presiding over Michael Flynn's sentencing, is the same judge who's presiding over Larry Klayman's Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against Robert Mueller's special counsel's office. So definitely Judge Sullivan knows that Robert Mueller is in a regular practice of withholding evidence and playing games with evidence. And I think that Judge Sullivan really wanted Michael Flynn to reject the guilty plea because the 302s that have come in the past few days seem to indicate that Flynn didn't lie, seem to indicate that the FBI did not inform Flynn that he could or should have a lawyer present during the questioning. In the past few days, we've even seen James Comey come out and say that he took advantage of the fact that the Trump administration was new and not quite fully organized and maybe not familiar with the standard practice of having the White House counsel be involved in an FBI questioning. So there seemed to be a lot of poker playing going on in that trial, and I'm firmly convinced, Larry, that Michael Flynn is adamantly sticking to this guilty plea, the plea deal, because his son, Michael Flynn Jr., could in fact potentially be implicated in a broader criminal case against Flynn Intelligence, which is his private intelligence firm that was working on behalf of Turkey. It's a complicated case, Larry. It's difficult, I think, for a lot of people to get their heads around.
Oh, yeah, it is. Now, our disadvantage, Jason, is you or I, or at least certainly I haven't, I don't know, I'm sure you haven't, but we have not seen the proffer to the deal Flynn made about his son. Now, based off the kind of proffer they put together for him, he may have saved his son.
What is a proffer, Larry?
But you got to be, proffer is an agreement, legal agreement.
Got it.
So if your attorney and the prosecutor agree to this, then if both sign it, it goes before the judge, and then they can't renege on it, all right? From what I heard today for the first time, which I think was causing Judge Howard to stand back a bit.
Sullivan, Judge Sullivan.
You know, he came out of the chutes on fire. It was scary to me what Sullivan said in his opening stuff that we heard. And then the thing that really bothered me was when he pointed out the treason charge
Well, he
brought it up.
clarified that after the recess.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But in the beginning, I was a little, holy smoke. That's when I sent you a text saying it was a dark day for Trump.
Yeah.
Now, what I can give is only my opinion, Jason.
Right.
From what I know of these people.
Sure.
Sullivan, it looks like to me, standing right here now, I think he is still square. I think he's still a solid judge.
Yep.
And the one thing that Flynn, through his attorneys, put him in the penalty box on, which I think the judge was trying to get himself out of so he could make some different kind of ruling. You see, if Flynn changed his story today and said, well, are you saying they tricked me and I didn't, then he's got to say he lied under oath in the court 8 months ago. 8 months ago. So he would have been guilty of either lying to the FBI or he's going to have to face perjury charges for lying to the court. So what the judge is setting him up for is he's going to do a little time. I'm sorry, I hate it. He's going to have to do days because, Papadopoulos and the other guy, they've had to serve a few days. So, he's going to face something, I fear. Now, having said that, the judge's persistence to try to get Flynn to postpone the sentencing.
Wasn't that interesting?
Postpone the sentence. Yeah, now what I think, once again, folks, my opinion, what I think predicated that, I believe the judge was fully ready to set up, wind up, and throw Flynn in the clink by his opening remarks. But what set it up was when the judge found out during the break that Flynn and all of this stuff took place before he was actually in the job.
Right.
It took place before. So when he heard that, apparently he was quite shocked from the way he acted and was kind of perturbed at the prosecutors that was the first time he heard that. Mueller's walking on a tightrope, buddy, with this judge. He better be careful.
Yeah.
So the judge did what I think was probably the smartest thing today. He does not have sufficient background now, and I think he knows it. He does not know the truth from the FBI, and he knows it. And so before he sentences Flynn, he wants 90 days to get tight with Mueller and find out what in the world is going on. He wants these things worked out. Now, the media is playing it up, the mainstream's playing it up that the judge let him off because he's got all this big testimony coming up in these other cases, but of course they're insinuating he's turning over every day stuff on Trump. Let me tell you, when the prosecutors gave him a recommendation of 0 months, you can bet, Jason, you can bet they got everything out of him they're going to get, and they know it.
Well, I don't know about that, Larry.
So it's up to the judge now.
Well, one of the important things that came up today was this other case in the Eastern District of Virginia. That was where they seemed to focus on Michael Flynn assisting the government. They didn't say really anything about the investigation into Donald Trump, and I found it really interesting that they seem to have made this hard pivot to Michael Cohen, and a lot of people in a lot of different venues in Congress and in the mainstream news have been talking about now how Michael Cohen has pled guilty. I think what they're really, really trying to do is get Flynn to plead guilty. And by they, I mean Robert Mueller and the prosecutors for the government. I think Judge Sullivan is an honest man who's interested in justice, and I think it was a legitimate mistake and a poor choice of words. He was asking if Michael Flynn had committed treason or could be charged with treason, and ironically, it was the government prosecutor who came back and said no, he hasn't met the standard of the crime of treason. So, yeah, that was unfortunate that Judge Sullivan said that, and he actually came back after a recess and apologized for having said that.
Right. Well, I'm still telling you, whatever Flynn has that Mueller may be using on Trump, whatever he can advise in these 2 additional trials coming from the pleas, whatever, in Virginia, I'm telling you, the prosecutor would not have put 0 months internment as a recommendation. The judge kept asking, if you notice, is he cooperating? Is he still cooperating?
Right.
Now, they're holding over Flynn just what you said earlier. You know, he can be tied into these other cases and starts all over again if he's not careful.
Right. They could just go indict him for something in this. The case in the Eastern District of Virginia has to do with his intelligence firm and work that they did for Turkey.
Right. Well, I'm going to say this, folks, all of you, and Jason, you as well. The judge has given us 90 days to supersede the lying, Flynn has admitted he lied. He admitted it under oath, so he cannot back out of lying. So now the judge has given Flynn, believe it or not, 90 days to substantiate how he was mistreated and therefore should be let out totally, all right? Mm-hmm. Should be let out totally. I'll tell you something else. If they had have sentenced him today and if Flynn didn't want to be sentenced like that, his attorneys could have appealed it because of the way all the things happened. So I think the judge is going to try to find out if and indeed what on earth actually happened, how they set him up. Was it technically legal? Was it right? Basically, Jason, the judge is in a mode of saying, it's not this, folks, but the judge is saying essentially like, did you read him his Miranda rights? All right. If somebody is guilty of something, but they were not read their Miranda rights, it's over.
Mm. Wow.
And so what he's trying to do is find out if there's sufficient real evidence that they set him up.
You know, Larry,
violated protocol.
Let me share this with you for a second, because I was just showing CNN and the New York Times, and now I'm looking at Fox News to get an idea of what these different headlines are saying. I did see Catherine Herridge in the courtroom, and it's talking here in this article about sentencing put off once again after the judge vents disgust and tells Flynn, you sold your country out. And Herridge says it's one of the most dramatic hearings she's ever witnessed, and certainly Catherine Herridge is much more experienced in courtroom reporting than I am, and I mean, I'm never sure. This is maybe only like the 5th or 6th court trial I've been into, so I felt it was dramatic. Certainly the back and forth between the judge and the number of times that he seemed incredulous that Michael Flynn didn't want to reject the guilty plea because it seems like he's not guilty. And what I observed was the judge speculating that was this Flynn selling the country out, not so much that he was rebuking him and telling him that he sold the country out. So that's what I really dislike about the lack of cameras in the courtroom. There's such a broad ability to shade the meaning of what was said. I mean, this is obviously the interpretation of one reporter. I didn't get that at all. I got the feeling that that Judge Sullivan knew that there were these backroom dealings going on. There's this sort of poker playing going on the part of Robert Mueller's special counsel's office. And
yeah, I agree. Jason, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
But for him to be able to affect this outcome, it's up to Flynn to get something, or his attorneys to present something in certiorari to the judge. So he's got proof. You know, he's got solid evidence of these wrongdoings that would hold up in court.
Now, Larry, what can
That's all
you
he's
say?
asking, but I agree with what you're saying.
What can you say? Give us your opinion about the fact that Michael Flynn is represented by Covington and Burling. I mean, this is a law firm where Eric Holder is a senior partner at Covington and Burling, and it doesn't seem like the right firm for Michael Flynn. I spoke to Michael Flynn's brother. I asked Joe Flynn why they had selected Covington and Burling, and he just sort of passed it off as early decision made, and not a good decision, but they're in there with them. And what do we think about Covington and Burling?
Well, I think that's probably going to be the mistake that will cost Flynn some time in jail, I fear. I believe that was a mistake that's going to do inevitable damage to President Trump. I know it's not discussed in this case, but remember, we're talking about Mueller here. If you understand the attorney shuffle, the attorney shuffle, folks, that's just basically telling you when you get an attorney in most things, you hire him. What an attorney's job is to beat you out of as much money as they can up front.
Right.
because they know that's all they're probably going to get. And so from the minute you give them your retainer, they stick your file in the file cabinet, and they don't do nothing. Send a letter or two, correspondence every once in a while. And then towards the end of the thing, right when there's no more money, nothing can happen, they'll come to you, Jason, and they'll say, look, Jason, they've really got you, buddy. So we're going to have to make a plea. Now, we'll fight it if you want to, but you're going to lose. That's who these guys are. That's what they're specialists at. And especially with their connection to the DNC, word.
Yeah.
You know, he's being represented by the enemy. Dear God. And remember, that law firm, if they cross the DNC, which do you think in money, Jason, is more important to that law firm? Flynn and his money or the DNC?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, it seems clear to me. I almost feel like this is a setup from the word go, and that he's, being represented by the enemy. There have been multiple articles in the mainstream news talking about Lanny Brewer, who is another partner at Covington and Burling, and he's been representing Flynn. This is a great concern for me, Larry, and I mean, I'm glad that you and I have been doing this show, and that there are other shows on Crowdsource the Truth where we're investigating this in depth, because, whether it's Fox News or the New York Times or CNN or whatever, you basically get that headline that is, a reporter sitting in a courtroom. I'll also add, Larry, it's extremely difficult to hear what's being said in the courtroom. So if you miss a word or a phrase or some nuance, you're reporting something that, again, it's the opinion of the journalist. But when we start to investigate some of these relationships between the law firms and who is a partner there and why are they representing Flynn and what's their real goal, and maybe what's, say, sort of the backstory or the broader relationship between Eric Holder, and what do we know anything about any interactions between Eric Holder, Lanny Brewer, Robert Mueller? Do those guys have any history together? The DNC obviously is critically important.
Mueller and Holder go back 20 years.
Really?
They've been jointly involved in things for at least that long, maybe even longer. So, look, you're playing with the same team. Remember what I used to tell you, Jason, what I told everybody? Let's just say you caught Hillary Clinton throwing a baby off a bridge into the river and killing her, right?
Right.
Remember what I tell you? Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call? And when you're in Washington, guess what? Whoever you call there, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're in big trouble.
Did you know on March 3rd, Eric Holder...
Big trouble.
Eric Holder predicted on March 3rd that Robert Mueller would charge Trump with obstruction of justice. I wonder, why would he say that if he is defending, his law firm is representing a key defendant in this matter? Why would he come out and say so? It seems like something that a principal partner at a law firm representing General Flynn would not say.
All right, now, I couldn't hear what you said because of the noise. I'm sorry. Would you please repeat what you said?
Eric Holder on March 3rd said that he predicted that Robert Mueller would charge Trump with obstruction of justice. And I just think it seems like a strange thing for a senior partner at a law firm representing Michael Flynn to say when Flynn's sentencing hadn't occurred yet. It seems like a partner at Covington and Burling should kind of shut up about something like this while he has a client whose case is ongoing. Certainly that would be in his client's best interest, wouldn't it?
Well, up until the day everything changed, when we were normal America, that would have been absolutely never allowed. Never allowed. But then now today they can go in and rob an attorney. They can go in and break client attorney privilege.
Right.
So things like that now, yes, it's wrong. Yes, the bar should be coming after Holder or the firm. But they're not going to, right, because they're all in it.
Gerald Esperanza is telling us it's the district of criminals, Larry. I like that.
Yeah, well, that's what it is.
Larry,
that is exactly, and that's why I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, while we're interacting with some of the comments, I do want to remind everyone that they can visit your website by going to nicholslive.com, and it is very important that people support Larry, He's coming on the show every week. He's sharing his insights with us. If you go to nicholslive.com, you can click on the donate button and you can send Larry money through PayPal. Now, Larry is one of the people who have stayed away from Patreon. And a lot of people, Larry, as you may know, have been very concerned about some of the recent political developments at Patreon. I was really sad to see Patreon ban Sargon of Akkad for using a word that I disagree with. I don't think people should be using that word or throwing it around, but you know, at the same time, if we want to support freedom of speech, people should be able to use whatever words they want, and then the listeners should decide. If you don't like rap music that uses that word, if you don't like podcasts that use that word, then don't listen. But the real problem I have is that Patreon made this judgment for the use of this word outside of Patreon. So they're sort of policing behavior, which is very problematic. And I've been losing a lot of Patreon supporters as a result of Patreon's activities. So I just want to ask everyone to just please hold on for a couple of weeks. And I hope that people will still sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. I don't have any other way right now to deliver our exclusive broadcasts to subscribers. There was an announcement by Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson that they are working on a free speech focused alternative to Patreon, and I will be on that as soon as it's available. But for now, I hope that people will stay with us on Patreon, and of course I hope that people will support Larry by going to nicholslive.com and sending Larry some sponsorship funds through PayPal. So Larry, talk to me some more about the attorney-client privilege and the unprecedented move in raiding an attorney's office. That's supposed to be sacrosanct, right? How can they kick in the door at Michael Cohen's office?
Absolutely. I mean, this was the first sign, I think, people that I've been trying to warn for 30 years, right? See, all of this stuff you're seeing today, all of these oddities, Jason, all of these oddities, that was normal for me back when I was fighting them in Arkansas. This is just the way it's done.
You mean the dirty tricks?
Yeah. Well, for example, when I sued Clinton for coming after me in the Iran-Contra thing and all the stuff he did to get me to lose my job at the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, I sued him, countersued. Get this. They switched judges to a Clinton best buddy who was fixing to retire, and the last thing he did was dismiss my case and didn't even tell me. Didn't even indict me, didn't tell me, so therefore I missed the opportunity to appeal it.
Wow.
And see, so that kind of treatment, I'm telling you, what you see as odd today is fixing to be normal if we don't stop it.
Well, there's so much stuff that they can do that we don't even really know about. I mean, there really should be, it should be off limit. Correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, but it should be off limits to raid somebody's lawyer and get documents and information that are protected by attorney-client privilege, right? Why were they allowed to do that? Why is that legal?
Well, do you know why, Jason? You and the audience, do y'all know why there's a thing called client-attorney privilege, and it's so important to keep it, as you say, sacrosanct? Do y'all know what that is? Why that is?
Not really. No. Tell us.
All right. It's a part of the assurance of fairness, equal justice to all. A man's got to have somebody to represent him in a court, right? They've got that rigged where pro se or by yourself's kind of hard, especially in federal court.
Yeah.
So you got to have an attorney. But if you don't have client-attorney privilege, what's going to happen is you're going to have clients who are already hesitant to tell their attorney the truth. You're going to find clients will say there's no way they're going to tell the attorney the truth, and there's going to be no justice, buddy. No justice, because people cannot tell the truth to work up a defense to protect them. They can't tell the truth.
Right.
As long as you don't have attorney privilege, that's where they whack you first. Now, this is back to taking over our government, taking over our country. This is another aspect of how the silent coup works. They've got these people in every place, attorneys in Washington, some attorneys where you are, wherever. You know, when you talk bias, I'd like to see how many of those people in that law firm voted for Trump.
Right, right. Well, so on the topic of bias, Larry, of course, this big interview with Michael Cohen was conducted by, George Stephanopoulos. What, if any, direct contact have you ever had with George Stephanopoulos? Or did he come into the Clinton picture after you left? Tons. What can you tell us?
I did not deal with Stephanopoulos when I was with him. When we started our war, our battle, feud, whatever you want to call it, they brought him in for the campaign. And when they brought him into the campaign, to be quite honest, he was easy to whip. He wasn't that good. He wasn't that smart, and I was able to get things out that he was running a war room with Betsy Wright, and they were trying to stop me at every turn. But he was not that good. Now
we've heard about that war room. What was that? An anti-Clinton? That was protecting Clinton. That war room.
Yes. The war room was set up because of me. They knew I had tons of stuff on Clinton, and if I ever broke through the ice and had a way to get it out, they had to be able to fight me. So what they did when I broke the story of Jennifer Flowers, the cat was out of the bag. They could no longer ignore that I had gotten through to the mainstream media. Although it was Star Magazine, it did cause the mainstream to have to cover it.
Right.
So when that happened, they formed up what they called the War Room. And it was specifically designed, although they would say, many candidates now say they have war rooms to fight any accusations made by their opponent. That wasn't what this war room was about. This war room, with Betsy Wright, his chief of staff in Arkansas, they were to figure out who I was coming with, what information I had, what proof I had, and then be able to get it out to the media so that they could stop me getting it out. They were set up, Jason, to fight me, buddy.
So Stephanopoulos, he's basically an old school Clinton media fixer. He's been doing this for a long time.
Yep.
Because this interview with Michael Cohen, it felt very staged to me, Larry. It felt like George Stephanopoulos was prompting him. It felt like, they were leading him into saying certain things that were damaging to the president. And it just seemed kind of, it didn't seem like Cohen was
did it not bother anybody when Clinton left office that Stephanopoulos goes to like ABC or whatever channel he's on?
Right.
Did it not bother anybody? Why would a
me.
network not just hire him to be not to be just a roving reporter? They hired him to take over the morning program. Holy smokes! A guy that had never even done television broadcasts.
Well, but wasn't he the press secretary or something for Clinton? What was his job?
Yes, that's all he was. He was just press secretary, or eventually even changed it to something else. But generally, he was just the guy to help with problems. Any of these things that came up,
something like that.
Yeah. But my word, for him to become the morning person on a major network, are you kidding me? Think about the other people that have been on programs for tens of years, waiting for their chance to get that senior position, and they bring in that egghead. Good God.
Well, it's really interesting, Larry, to explore the relationship between high-powered Washington, D.C. politics, high-powered Washington, D.C. law firms, and the media. It's all the same people that are rolling around, and there's these relationships and these interactions. When Larry Klayman presented us with the documents that were produced from his FOIA lawsuit against the special counsel's office, it's just rife with information that leads me to believe that certain members of the mainstream press are actually feeding stories into the special counsel's office. Shane Harris was with the Wall Street Journal at the time. He's with the Washington Post now. He was contacting Peter Carr, who's the press liaison in Robert Mueller's office, and saying, hey, why don't you come to the Wall Street Journal and we want to share with you all the information our Russia team has. Now, in the investigations that we've been doing on Crowdsource the Truth, that involves information that's been given to me by Charles Ortel, emails directly from Peter Smith, who Shane Harris has done a lot of reporting on. The emails from Peter Smith contradict what Shane Harris was reporting in the Wall Street Journal. So now we've got this reporter who's reporting things that are wrong, contacting Peter Carr in the special counsel's office, feeding them information, And then we've got all these mainstream reporters calling Charles Ortel asking, have you heard from Robert Mueller's office yet? Have you been contacted by Mueller's office yet? Then the FBI comes and questions Charles. I feel like I'm looking at, elements of a hit squad, Larry.
Let me tell you, I'm going to give you a sample of how bad this is. What if I told you, back during Clinton's time, there was a Washington Post top reporter that had the Monica Lewinsky story.
Uh-huh.
And wouldn't run it. Wouldn't run it. Would you believe that?
I would believe it, yes.
Well, it happened. The man's name was Michael Isikoff. He was with Washington Post. He was one of their top reporters during the campaign.
He's the guy from Yahoo News who fed Christopher.
Huh?
He's the same guy from Yahoo News who fed Christopher Steele the information, or corroborated the Steele dossier, isn't he, Michael Isikoff?
Yeah. Well, Isikoff worked with me and begged me. He said, and he had actually done a couple things that were fairly straight up. And so finally, I had the story of Lewinsky, and I knew it was huge. I knew it was the story that we could get Clinton with. So I thought, well, I'm going to talk to Isikoff, because all of the people he needed to pull the story off, I had control of, so he couldn't get them without me. So I talked to Isikoff, told him the story, essentially. But I said, I'm not going to give it to you exclusively unless you agree to the lineage, folks, the space in the paper to tell the story, and that they're going to run it. He said, I promise you, they will run this. This is the story of a century. I said, fine. So we worked together, and here we've got the Lewinsky story. Here I'm in the middle of fighting with Paula Jones's attorneys. Mm-hmm. I'm helping them, and then I've got Starr on me to turn over stuff that I was giving to the lawyers for Paula, but I wasn't giving to them. All of this is going on. Well, here comes the day to release the Lewinsky stuff. I get a phone call from Isikoff, and I could tell from his voice, I could tell it wasn't going right. He finally ended up having to tell me they spiked it. I can't run it. But he said, Larry, I quit. This was a career-making story. I said, great, that's real great of you. So I shut up, hung up the phone, and that's when I had met a guy in California on George Putnam's program, an old goofy kind of guy named, oh my God, my mind just went blank.
Matt Drudge?
Matt Drudge.
Yeah.
And I gave Matt Drudge, that's where he got the Lewinsky story. I gave Matt Drudge all of that stuff because I knew he could at least get it out, he said, on his internet and so forth. He was a nobody. You understand that deal? Here I had Isikoff in the Washington Post. They spiked it, so I didn't have time to do anything with anybody. So I went to this guy, Matt Drudge, who was a nobody living in a one-room apartment in L.A. But he knew how to use the internet. Gave it to him. Ask him. He'll tell you the story. And then, boom, then all of a sudden, Drudge was somebody.
Right.
And that's how the story came out. But think of the power, folks. Think of the power the Clintons had to keep the Washington Post from running that story. Think about it.
Yeah.
I would say that's far greater than, for example, the CEO of Enquirer kind of not printing bad stuff for the, that's the way it is, Jason. That's the way it is.
Right. Yeah. So there's no doubt.
That's why I tell you. That's right. There's none. None, folks. And if you believe there's anything different, you're fooling yourself. That's why I tell you, Jason, this thing is at critical mass. It's over if we don't stop it.
Well, and it's interesting to see, Larry, that when we Google the name of David Pecker, who of course is the the CEO or the editor of the National Enquirer, all the mainstream reporting here, we got Newsweek, Washington Post, Bloomberg, they're all saying new peril for Trump's circle, publisher of National Enquirer admits to hush money payments, etc. So it really reeks of this is all stuff that's just waiting in the wings, traps to be sprung, and they're I hate to say it, but it seems like the anti-Trumps are having success, not necessarily in proving anything tangible, but in doing all of these simultaneous things that just make the optics absolutely terrible.
Now, in our business, in our system that we built, it's called reality is as one perceives it.
Right.
You got it? Reality is as one perceives it. And what you're seeing going on now with the media and the politicians and the media and all of these different people, if that's all you hear, eventually you get a picture in your head, even if you're trying not to, eventually you get a picture in the head. The guy's got to be guilty of something. Right. Something's wrong.
Right. Right. I mean, I agree with you, Larry. I see that happening. And, I see it happening in social media as well. There are opponents of Crowdsource the Truth, and you and every guest that I have on here that do that. They just incessantly push out the same false stories with no evidence, no corroboration. They just put it out, and then they find somebody else to put the same story out. They find somebody else to post that story, and then people start to get this impression of, oh, here's this story again, it must be true. But it's this like just terrible method of repeating the same lie again and again.
Mm-hmm. And wherever you go, that's what you see. Wherever you go, there were several times, Jason, because of how involved I was with the media going after Clinton. I'll never forget the 2 or 3 times that they screwed up and sent me the daily talking points. But what was interesting about me getting the talking points was because I had tentatively called myself a reporter, an independent reporter, so that I had the right to talk to some people and then say I don't have to give out who I'm talking to. On at least 3 occasions, they sent me, just like they did the regular media, they sent me their talking points. And you could take those talking points from the DNC and the Clintons and take the copy points and watch TV, and that's exactly what they said.
Wow.
And the newspaper. Exactly
so
the talking
standard talking points that they're sending out to every reporter, and it's like, here's your job. Say this and push the... See, that's interesting.
That's right.
Because, Larry, when there was a lot of mainstream coverage of Dr. Corsi, there was on MSNBC, Ari Melbler opened up the interview by saying, Robert Mueller doesn't leak. And it's like, what? That's so overt. But obviously, Robert Mueller does leak. We have evidence of that in the Freedom Watch USA FOIA lawsuit. So that's interesting that they plant that idea. It literally is like programming people, right? They just keep saying the same thing again and again and again.
It's called social engineering. We did it over and over. I mean, it's just a matter of mainstay doing. That's what it is. And it's done every day. It's being done now in excess to anything I have ever seen. The difference today versus when I was doing it with Clinton, when I was fighting Clinton, the difference today is they're out front with their bias.
Right. Well, and they also
was there when I was fighting them before.
Social media. So there's many more sort of people and many more ways to kind of push this information out. Can you talk about that, Larry? I know you weren't personally involved in social media, but do you see this social engineering happening in social media right now?
You betcha. You betcha. Jason, the definition of disinformation in political speak is the amount of truth you have to use to get out your disinformation.
What do you mean?
So when one of these groups, when one of these people you see on the internet to grow and drag your audience and all of the conservative people, Alex Jones' audience, they'll break on the internet being conservative watchdogs, right?
Right.
They'll break, Jason, with a true thing that really happens.
Right.
True thing that really happens. Then they may do another one that really happens. And people go, oh, my God, they're wired in. They are wired in. These people know.
Right.
And the longer they go, the less truth they have to put out. Then they can get more into devoting 80% of their disinformation platform to confusing or lying to the people. That's happening in social media.
Right.
That's what's happening there.
So limited hangout is
remember
what you're
this.
talking about, right?
Yeah, then you got the other side of it, which is they've got that the people that control social media, like Google and all of them, they're in a position where they can stop you from saying something.
Right.
They can take you off the air.
Well, right.
When
So
you
in other
become
words,
a
if you
threat,
become too effective, they're gonna now shut you down.
yeah, you're Jason. Where you sit right now, I can tell you, you are one story away, Jason, of having a nationally prominent career-building story that you get and you break. You got it? You're one story away from that. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen tonight. It could happen next week. It could happen next year. But that's all you're short. You're short one major breaking story. But here's what you're also going to have happen. When you get that major breaking story that would build you a career normally,
Yeah.
it will end your career.
What do you mean?
You break a story like that, they will turn all the guns they used on Kavanaugh, all the tricks they're using on Flynn and everybody else, they're going to turn them on you, and then they're going to tell the people that control the platform you're on to shut you off. And what's neat about Google and Facebook and all those guys, they could shut you off, and it don't even make sense. Tell me why you're shutting me off.
Right.
They don't even try to make sense why they take you off.
Yeah, that's what happened to Laura Loomer, and then there's no need for them to answer that, really. They just sort of do whatever they want, and they operate under, we're in the Wild West as far as some of these technologies are concerned, Larry. A lot of them are protected by the Decency and Communications Act, this Section 230 thing that, when it was created in the 1990s, was intended to protect internet service providers and people like Verizon and AT&T, where they can't be held liable for information transmitted over their network because they're just providing the network. Facebook and YouTube and Twitter are relying on that same protection, but unlike the phone company or an internet service provider, Facebook, Google, Twitter, YouTube, all that, they are actually auditing the material and editing the material. If they don't like what you put out, they stop it from going out. So that's more like a newspaper, like the New York Times. And if the New York Times puts out
like
something...
Right. Spiking stories.
Right.
Sure enough.
Or allowing false stories to go.
If you don't believe our beloved representatives and senators in Washington aren't in on it,
Yeah.
if you don't believe, folks, they're not connected to that, ask yourself this question. Don't believe me, don't believe Jason. Ask yourself this question. It's obvious that we have a problem with the internet because of a monopolistic system, right?
Yep.
Basically, it's a monopoly, right? Now, AT&T was big. Southwestern Bell was big back during their heyday, right?
Yeah.
They came in and busted them up, didn't they?
Yeah, Larry Klayman was
Busted them
directly involved in that.
Why are the Republicans, when they have the presidency, the Senate, and the House, why did they not introduce legislation? Knowing that they were spiking stories, this isn't new, knowing they were spiking stories, spiking sites, doing all of that, why did they not even introduce? You've never even heard of a legislation being introduced.
No.
To go after a monopoly. They qualify.
Yeah.
They meet the 7 standards for a monopoly.
Why do you think they're not
And
going
then
after
some.
them, Larry? Why is it?
Because they're in on it. They're in on it.
They want that level of
And
control.
they want that. That protects them, Jason.
Yeah. Larry, let me
Have
point
you
out...
ever thought about, Jason, the nepotism in Washington? The nepotism?
Oh, yeah.
Did y'all know Nancy Pelosi's father, before her, was a congressman? Powerful congressman?
Didn't know that.
Look around Washington, D.C., Jason.
Larry, let me
The
point
power
out
players
something.
today, a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Their families were there, of course. Yeah. I want to just point out to you some reporting in the Washington Post. And this is interesting because, like I said, I like Catherine Herridge. I think she's a responsible reporter and a nice person.
Right.
But I think she made a mistake because the Washington Post has reported that Flynn's sentencing is delayed, and the judge tells the ex-Trump advisor, arguably, you sold out your country. So, I mean, as I observed that conversation, it seemed to me that Judge Sullivan was debating that. He was asking if that's what happened, if that's what he was doing. I mean, the thing that's crazy about all of this, Larry, is that what Michael Flynn did was he asked Sergei Kislyak not to overreact to the Obama sanctions, the sanctions that were put on Russia for interfering with the election. So this is the other thing that lawyers love to do, and particularly Robert Mueller loves to do. We're so caught up in the minutia of this case, we've gotten so far away from what it's actually about. Michael Flynn was telling Russia, just relax, don't escalate. These sanctions were brought against Russia for something that there's still been no proof of, interfering with the election. Obama just issued these sanctions against Russia, and Flynn said, listen, just hold tight, don't overreact, don't do something retaliatory towards the United States that would damage the United States. Just wait a couple days or 2 weeks or whatever it was, and we'll be in office and we'll deal with it. And the Russians did that. They held back from retaliating with economic or other types of retaliation against the United States. This is helping the people of the United States. And now Michael Flynn is all jammed up over it.
Yeah, and I'll bet you every person coming into the administration has done that or more. Everyone. But why did they do it this time? Let me tell you what this is all about, folks. We do not have a legal system anymore. If they were really concerned about lying to the FBI, if that was such a major criteria that can never be violated, then go and get Hillary and all her people. Now, if you're not going to get Hillary and all of her people, right, then you can't go after Trump and all his people. That's called selective prosecution.
Right, yeah.
Can't do that.
You know, the other substantial thing that came out, Larry, that I don't know if I was I think I was aware of this, but I was reminded of it this morning. Flynn was interviewed by the FBI in January 2017. The 302, which is the written report of the interview, doesn't include an audio recording of the actual words. It's a written report of the interview. That wasn't presented until August. And, you know, just as we've seen right here in this, I don't even know if you would call this a test, but just in this small example right here of comparing the reporting from two people who, you know, let's presume that they were both trying to do the right thing. I'm not trying to disparage anybody for saying this, but we've got some pretty stark contrasts in the reporting from Catherine Herridge and the reporting from the Washington Post. So, you know, why don't they in 2017 or 2018, why don't they have an audio recording of what was actually said rather than someone writing it down? Why do they want to introduce that opportunity for human error or present the opportunity to someone who wants to maliciously change the results of the interview with a report rather than a recording or a transcript?
Well, I'll tell you this, I'll give you two guesses, and the first one don't count.
Right.
And this is just not about Flynn.
Right.
Folks, they don't want an actual accounting because guess who writes the 302?
FBI agent.
Who does the official 302? The FBI.
In this case, it was Peter Strzok.
So to be honest, as long as it's not recorded, they can get in there with you or me or Flynn or anybody. They can go in and do whatever they want to do, and then when they write their 302, they write it their version.
Wow.
How they perceive it, Jason.
Yeah.
See, that's the requirement on the 302 to the officer that reads it, the FBI agent that prepares it. It must be 100% as you perceive the meeting to be, or the interview to be. Perceive, big word, perceive.
Right.
So, gosh, that's a license to steal if you're a crook.
A lot of room in there for them to change it around. Larry, Rise Above, who's watching us on Periscope right now, says, Draw and Strike thinks Flynn Group was a CIA op and that it's a CIA/DIA operation. I don't know anything about that. Have you heard anything about that?
I don't either. I do not. I don't. And, Jason, this is one of those things to your listener. You know, I'm not going to comment on something like that because it would be totally wrong, whatever I do, because I have no knowledge of that.
Right.
Please forgive me.
No, no problem. I mean, just reading the comments there. People are also saying, Paul H. tells us that Sidney Powell says we need a law to protect against rogue prosecutors. I agree with that, and I have tremendous respect for Sidney Powell. I had a great opportunity to speak with her briefly outside the courthouse right after the hearing ended, and people can go back and listen to that. I posted it just earlier today. She was a little bit perplexed by what happened in the courtroom today because, of course, as we've said, Judge Sullivan was essentially, he was dumbfounded that Flynn did not want to withdraw the guilty plea. So I think Sidney was contemplating the various reasons that might motivate Michael Flynn to do that. And right now, the best speculation seems to be that there is this sort of guillotine or axe or whatever you want to call it hanging over Flynn's head, where Mueller, he's got a gun to his head. He's holding the hammer back, and he's saying, "Listen, you do anything that we don't like, and we're going to indict your son."
Yep. I mean, look, they've got everything. Look, Jason, you, me, anybody in this audience right now. If the government brought all the assets and the money that they brought into Flynn and going after Trump, all of us would look like Al Capones. They would make us look like Al Capones to the public.
Right.
They would.
Right.
Any one of us.
Well,
none of us have walked this earth totally clean of anything. See, this is the problem with Trump. We wanted a president that was not a seasoned professional politician, didn't we? We thought a businessman could maybe run this country better, and so far he has. They don't want that. And plus, the problem with bringing in an outsider like Trump, not a politician from birth, they know there's things they don't know about how the system works.
Right.
And that's why Comey was able to use that to get those two FBI guys in.
Yeah.
Had it have been somebody that had been politicking since the day of birth, when they got a call from the FBI, they would have been smart enough to say, we're not going to talk to anybody unless we got the White House counsel with us.
Absolutely. Larry,
they didn't know that.
Question just occurred to me that I think is right up your alley, because you've told us a lot about how you have experience and knowledge of some of the black ops that went on in Nicaragua, etc. You're familiar with Cody Snodgrass? Do you know who he is? So Cody is...
I don't think so.
Well, he's a black ops contractor who did a lot of different stuff in Nicaragua, and he knew Chip Tatum, I believe, and recently, 2015 or 16 or something like that, he wrote a book and he came out and he revealed a lot of this information, particularly about his foreknowledge of the destruction of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City that was attributed to Timothy McVeigh. Now, in the story that Cody tells, they approached him to do the destruction of the building, and they approached a few other people, but Cody refused to do it because he didn't want to attack Americans, and he speaks also about an umbrella op where there were foreign operatives who were to do the major explosion of the building, and the Timothy McVeigh explosion with the truck with a manure bomb and everything was a cover-op that they were going to blame the explosion on, but the real explosion involved much more powerful explosives and other people and things like that. So just responding to the comments that just came up right now, we know that the Flynn intelligence group was doing some sort of operation in Turkey, something to do with Fethullah. Now the question is, if Mueller and people at the FBI and people in the CIA and whoever know about that op, can't they just look through their black book of ops and say, hey, wait a minute, Flynn is working with us on this op over here to try to do something that we want, but what if we turn it on its head and kind of, screw Flynn and basically throw him to the wolves and now blame him for all this stuff? And Flynn knows he can't talk about the details and everything about that classified stuff. They've sort of got him in checkmate, and they've screwed one of their own operators.
Yep.
Is something like that going on?
It could very well. I mean, I can assure you, as dirty as the FBI is at the top level going after Trump, correspondingly, the CIA in its top levels are equally the same.
But isn't that standard practice, Larry, where they screw over the guys that are agreeing to do these ops? At some point or another, you become the fall guy?
Yep. You become expendable, Jason.
Or you go from an asset to a liability and they take you out.
you know, you do all kinds of things for the government. People do all kinds of things like that guy, and you do all that. And then you reach a point. You notice in the black ops business, there are no gray hairs. You know what I mean? No gray hairs, folks. Because by the time you get 35 in that racket, you got a problem.
You know too much.
You know too much. And they're not going to let you leave. You're not going to walk out of there. No one wants you to know, because if they ever have to get you mad at them, they know they're in trouble.
Right. So is it
you become
possible?
Expendable.
Is it possible that Michael Flynn speaking out about Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama deliberately creating ISIS, was that perhaps the moment where he went from asset to liability, and people high up in some of these clandestine organizations decided it was time?
No,
to get rid of him?
I think he went from asset to liability the day he signed on board with Donald Trump.
Right.
That was the day he became public enemy to the CIA, FBI, Hillary, etc. Now, the only reason it took so long up until right before the election for all this stuff to happen is just like everybody else. They didn't think he had a chance of winning. Trump didn't have a chance of winning, so they didn't worry about it. But once he won, he was nailed.
Right. They started scrambling.
Jason, I want to say something if I may.
Sure.
Folks, yesterday, went up actually last night, I did an explanation of why I say we're at critical mass. Now, folks, I give it to you all. I give every detail that I could, telling you exactly why we are at critical mass in this country, and why starting January, we're on a ticket out of town if we don't stop it. I wish you would go, I don't know where it's at, is it on my website, that nicholslive.com, is that where it is? Is that where they put those things up?
I do believe, I was just looking on nicholslive.com, Larry, and of course, people can support you financially on nicholslive.com, but I believe that that little testimonial, that's on your Larry Nichols YouTube channel, which people can subscribe to by just searching for Larry Nichols on YouTube. It's going to be the Larry Nichols official channel, and it was posted just 18 hours ago. It's called Larry Nichols, Will the Deep State Win, right? Oh no, sorry, Critical Mass,
yep.
1 day ago.
Critical Mass. And then, Jason, before we go, I've got to tell people, folks, you may get tired of this, but you better not. Jason, I'm here on Tuesday. This is a platform where we're going to get the truth out, where I get to come and tell what I know and what I think you must hear. But he's got to be kept on the air. He's got to be kept out there. So I beg you all, think about this. If you work, don't you get paid? Well, Jason works. I work. How do we get paid?
Exactly.
How? You have got to get some skin in this game with us. Do you hear me, folks? You've got to get skin in the game. Jason, please tell them how they can support you and what you're doing.
I appreciate that, Larry. Before I do that, I want to remind everybody, nicholslive.com is the site, and PayPal is the way to send money to Larry, nicholslive@aol.com. He's also got an address there that I guess he's not able to accept checks, but people can send cash. A little bit risky to send through the mail. Can people send you like postal money orders, Larry?
No, just send cash. I mean, nobody's going to send much, but you know, if they can. It's just when they fixed it to where banks can't verify checks being good, I can't cash them. So anyway, if you can send, if you can't use PayPal, send cash.
There you go. So people can sponsor Larry that way. But yeah, as we were discussing earlier, the best way is still through Patreon or PayPal. Unfortunately, I can't get the exclusive videos to people who sponsor through paypal.me/crowdsource the truth, but $10 sponsors and higher will get a free Sunday with Charles screensaver. And of course, still on Patreon. We've got a lot of people who are moving away from Patreon. Unfortunately, I understand that decision. I hope that people will stay with us for just another month through December. There's a lot of great shows that are going to be on there. Tonight, we've got a special episode of More Pain with Michael Moore of True Pundit. I'm hoping we're going to have some special guests with us here in Washington, D.C., but they haven't been confirmed yet.
And let me tell you, folks, how hard this is. The other day on Jason's program, I begged hard for help, hard. And then Friday, we begged for help. or if they, ask for help. Now, at least 10,000 or more people have seen them, heard them.
Those videos, yeah.
And I've gotten five. 5 people have sent something. Now, I fight being bitter, Jason. I don't know about you. I fight being bitter because it hurts.
Well, don't take it personally.
Put into this.
Don't take it personally, Larry. I mean, I think what we're dealing with is, part of this issue is that the way television has been set up and the way YouTube has been set up is this advertiser-driven model where you've got this multi-billion-dollar corporation that's the television station or YouTube or whatever,
right,
and they're paid by other multi-billion-dollar corporations who don't have people's best interest in mind. And the thing that I've been trying to do, Larry, and I'm really thankful that you've been helping me by doing this show every week, is we're trying to move away from that corporate-owned, advertiser-driven model to create a viewer-sponsored model. So it is really important that people go to nicholslive.com and support Larry, and also go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth to support the show. Larry, I always appreciate that you are upfront about helping me let people know how they can sponsor the show and how they can sponsor you. I also really appreciate your insights and your personal dealings with people like George Stephanopoulos and the Clintons and the stuff about how black ops work and how the FBI works. I do need to wrap up for right now. Is there anything you wanted to leave our viewers with before we go?
Well, I would just hope, folks, you would go to the YouTube channel or whatever and listen to the program on December 17th, the one yesterday.
Yep.
Listen to it. That will tell you a lot more about where we are for the first time that you'll be able to tell others. That's the key to it. I tried to do it in a way so you can tell others.
Right.
Listen.
Yeah,
and thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Larry. And that's a great video for people to listen to. 10,000 views in just one day. So, Larry, thanks again for joining me. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll be back next week, and we'll see what happens with General Flynn. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see you later tonight at 7 p.m. for a special episode of More Pain, and that's only on Patreon. Thanks, everybody.